Alright, so I am back, and today is the first actual review of Star Wars Week, and we're going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Saga Begins. I think there was more titles to it, too, when it was first coming out. It was like Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, The Saga Begins, Quest of Anakin, or I don't know. It was a very long-winded title. I was just sitting there like, just call it Phantom Menace. just no. Anyway, so this was the first of the prequel movies. If you guys haven't seen this, what rock have you been hiding under? I know I'm a Transformers fan. I've always been a Transformers fan. I always will be a Transformers fan. But Star Wars, I was also always in Star Wars. I don't remember a time in my life where I was like, oh, I don't know what Star Wars is. I mean, it's been there my entire life. So yeah, Star Wars is pretty big for me. It's huge. So I went and saw this opening day when this came out. I wasn't able to see the original trilogy in theaters, but I saw this opening day because I was pumped. And I remember leaving that movie, I was like, okay. I don't think I'll see the next one in theaters. And I didn't. But anyway, so this is, we've got Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're investigating this whole trade federation. And they get involved in all that stuff with the Princess Amidala, whatever her name is. The cute chick in this movie that I feel really bad about saying cute because she's way too young. But at the time, I was old enough to think she was cute. I mean, it's one of those really weird scenarios where I remember when I first watched this movie, I was like, man, she's cute. But now I can't. I just can't really say that because I'm so much older. But she's older now, too. So, anyway. For the most part, this movie got a lot of bad reviews. Everyone said that this was bad. And quite frankly, it really isn't. It was actually a pretty solid movie. There were some parts in it that I would have definitely cut out or cut down. And I have the special edition, so longer pod race. And that is a scene that really needed to not be there. That was the most boring thing in the entire history of the Star Wars franchise. I was bored to tears. I absolutely hated that scene and anything to do with pod racing ever since then. I had some friends that were like, oh, dude, you got to try Star Wars Pod Racer. And I was like, absolutely not. I am not going near these games because I don't want to endorse those stupid pod racing. I hated that. There is absolutely nothing that excited me in the pod racing scenes whatsoever. I'll take that back. There were some sand people in there. And I was like, oh, sand people. I remember them. And that was it. Other than that, that was just dreadful. The little boy that they got to play Anakin wasn't the best actor, but he's also a little boy. I give him credit. He did a decent job. Everyone else did a really good job acting. There's no one in these movies, or in this movie, that I'd say, oh, well, that was a bad actor. People give Jar Jar Binks a hard time. But I honestly, I don't mind him. At the first I did, but then after, thinking about it for a while, really, he wasn't that bad of a character. He was annoying, childish, visual character. He was always doing something very flashy on there. But the movie itself had lots of dialogue in it. And and things like the pod racer scene where you're just like, come on, finish the race. Get back on the jet or the whatever spaceship and get the fuck off this planet, because this is absolutely dreadful. But I mean, when they're talking to the Trade Federation at the beginning of the movie, they're talking. Then they go down to the planet and they meet Jar Jar Binks, and then they go to Jar Jar Binks people. They're talking. Then from there they go to the actual palace and talk to the princess or queen. It's been a little while since I've seen this one. But they talk to the queen and they're talking for a while. Then they get on the ship and then they fly away. Then they get to Tatooine and they're talking. And they go to the shop owner. They're talking. Little boy goes to his parents, bring some random strangers there. They're talking. Then they fly over to where the Senate is. I can't remember the name of the planet. And they're talking. And then they fly back. And they're talking. And then finally we get some action in the last 15 minutes of the movie. And then after the action is done, they're talking. And I'm not insulting the talking so much as if a child is watching this movie and there was no Jar Jar Binks, that they would leave. They would lose interest. Hell, I mean, honestly, think about it. Even if you hate Jar Jar Binks, at least when you know Jar Jar Binks is on screen, you get that emotion of hatred, which gets you pulled into the movie. Like, God, I hate this guy. I hope he dies this time I watch this movie. It's pulling you back into the movie. The dialogue makes you zone out. You just sit there and like, okay, this is fascinating. It's the same as, those scrolling words at the beginning of the movie. You just sit there and go, if it was just a couple sentences, you're like, okay, I follow you. But with the Star Wars movies, have always been a few paragraphs, and you're just sitting there like, I blinked. I'm sorry. Can we scroll back? And I'm not trying to insult the movies. I'm really not. I'm just saying he really wasn't the worst thing in this movie. The pod race by far for me was the worst part of the movie. The shoehorning R2-D2 into the movie was also really bad. Really bad. But what was worse was shoehorning C-3PO into the movie and saying Anakin Skywalker built him. That was fucking stupid. That was absolutely the stupidest thing in this movie. The worst part of the movie was the pod race. The stupidest thing in the movie was C-3PO. Not insulting C-3PO because he's a great character in the original trilogy, but in this movie, he's far from necessary. There was absolutely no reason whatsoever he was in this movie. All he did was stand around and do nothing, and he barely stood. There was no purpose to him. R2-D2, like I said, that was stupid that they got him shoehorned into the movie and kind of kept him a main character throughout the entire prequel trilogy. That was stupid, but there was a purpose to his character in the movie. Because, when they're flying away from the Trade Federation the first time, they get shot, and R2-D2 goes out, and he's the only one that survives repairing the wings. So, that gave him purpose in this movie. And thus, because he was, a worthy servant droid, he becomes part of the crew. Because if I have a pack of attack dogs and all of them die except for one that fixes all my problems, I'm keeping that attack dog wherever I'm going. It's one of those kind of things. So I mean, I can kind of forgive that one. I cannot forgive the C-3PO. I can't. That was just ridiculously stupid. Now, let's see, Qui-Gon Jinn was a pretty good character. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a decent character in this one. He gets much better in the other two movies. This one, he's kind of a whiny brat. And, you know, all the Jedi were there, you know, Yoda, and all of them. And all I could think of, you know, sitting there thinking about them is, wow, these guys are pompous. Just, I'll get in more into that in a later video. But quite frankly, yeah, I just, this movie wasn't paced as well as anything else under the sun because of all the talking, the dialogue, and the pod racing scene. I do not like pod racing. Okay, anyway, back to the premise of the movie. But you know, you get all this stuff going on, and it's very interesting seeing the like when they're actually at the Senate and they're talking politics about the Trade Federation, and it really made me question, you know, how in the wrong is Palpatine throughout the course of these prequel trilogies. You know, he sees that the politicians are corrupt in the Senate. And we see it too, because, you know, as soon as somebody starts, as soon as the senator starts wanting to help everybody against the Trade Federation, you see people whispering, and even Palpatine standing there like, okay, now his backers are telling him he can't talk like this, and he needs to back down, and he backs down. And quite frankly, I mean, that's almost like politics now. You know, big business is in the shadows saying, hey, we don't want you to do that. And then, hey, it doesn't happen. You know, there was corruption in there, and Palpatine seen that, and he's seen that as an opportunity to take over, yes, but it just, you know, it was one of those, you know, here's a planet that's in need because they're being taken over by the Trade Federation, and the Senate really dropped the ball. Even with Palpatine getting voted in as the new Chancellor, I think it was Chancellor, right? You know, still, even then, even though he was telling everyone he's going to help and do this, and he probably was trying, but it takes a little time to get into that, to get to that point where you can actually start helping people. And so they ended up having to go take care of it themselves, which they do. But it was just one of those, like, wow. I mean, like I said, I mean, how evil is Palpatine really when he put all this stuff in motion, but all it's really doing is pointing out the fact that there's something wrong with the Senate and how long it takes them to debate before people start getting the help they need. So, you know, there's that. But I found that politics, I always find politics in movies like this very interesting because it's never focused a lot on the politics. It's always behind the scenes, and every now and then they brief on it, and they did a very good job in this one. And the first three, the prequel trilogy actually, where they go into the politics of the Senate, and you're just sitting there like, that's pretty awesome. I thoroughly do enjoy that. So, you know, they pick up Anakin, and he's supposed to be the destined one. Highest midichlorians, and yeah, I think they could have left the midichlorian part out. I think a true Jedi Master standing near somebody that powerful would probably instantly realize this guy is, you know, because, you know, they're always saying, oh, the Force is strong with this one. Well, wouldn't they just realize that by walking in the room with him? They're like, oh, I got to do a blood test to see how strong he really is. And the whole story about, oh yeah, she conceived him without a father, whatever. That was stupid. We didn't need that at all. We didn't. Yeah, we did not need that. But it was okay, and kind of forgivable. But at the same time, really, I would not have put that in it if I were in charge of these movies. I thought that was kind of like, okay, that's lame. And they go back, like I said, they go to the Senate and they ask for help. And then they go back to the planet and they're like, okay, the Gungans are going to come help. And they mass their army and they're going out there to fight the droids. And that was a pretty decent scene. The fighting, and it was funny just how one-sided that was once the droids went through that little force field. And they just walked right through it and just started mowing them down. It was awesome. I loved it. And then Anakin accidentally gets into a spaceship and accidentally flies into the Trade Federation and accidentally destroys the control. Seriously, Jar Jar Binks was not the worst part of this movie. That was so stupid. The little boy is flying into space by himself. Well, with R2-D2. The plane was on automatic and he couldn't get it off, and he flies all the way up there and he's the one that takes him out. Really? Lucas, why? But then Lucas quickly redeems himself with probably one of the best lightsaber fights in the history of Star Wars movies. Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Absolutely incredible. The music, the timing. Oh my god, that was awesome. I to this day, every now and then I'll pull it up on my phone on YouTube and just watch the fight because it is so good. I mean, the double-bladed lightsaber just gives you chills when Darth Maul just first comes out and is like, tss, tss, and you're like, that's new. What's going on here? And it just, oh man, that was incredible. Like I said, one of the best lightsaber fights in the history of Star Wars. That thing just killed it for me. I mean, I would go sit through the pod racing scene one more time in theaters to watch the lightsaber duel at the end. Although, admittedly, I might just go sit outside in my car and listen to music for, close to 2 hours and then sneak back in and just be like, okay, now it's the lightsaber time. Anyway, it was just an incredible fight. I really, really enjoyed it. Maul kills Qui-Gon, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi loses his temper and kills Darth Maul, which was one of those confusing things about the Jedi where, they're not supposed to lose their temper, but he very clearly lost his temper. He's yelling and he's running and he's mad, and you're just sitting there like, but Jedi aren't supposed to do that. Anyway, so he ends up killing Darth Maul, and everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow, and that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna pause this for a second. Timer was almost out. So yeah, I thought it was a very good movie. Not nearly as good as some of the other Star Wars movies, but for what it was, it is a good movie. And I do think Jar Jar Binks is very... He's hated for the wrong reasons. Yeah, he was a stupid, childless character, but there were other problems with this movie that if they would have fixed those, then Jar Jar Binks wouldn't have been as much of a problem because, well, one, you wouldn't have needed Jar Jar Binks. I mean, honestly, you need Jar Jar Binks in the movie to keep you entertained. Like I was saying, you just need entertainment in the movie that you're watching for entertainment. Yeah, it's one of those kind of characters because I think Lucas knew that this was, without Jar Jar Binks and without that last lightsaber battle, he knew this movie was nothing more than just build up, character development. That's it. There was nothing in this movie that's really worth being in a movie. I mean, there are some things that is stated in the intro to some of these movies that would make a better movie than this. I'm not trying to insult the movie. I'm just saying that without Jar Jar Binks being in there to entertain the kids and that final lightsaber battle, there really isn't much in this movie that is like, oh, this needs to be a movie. So all in all, I'm going to give this Star Wars Episode 1, I'm going to give it a... I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. I know that sounds low, but I think it's fair. I think it's a fair review. It's not bad. It's not a bad movie. It's not an incredible movie. It's above average. So it's a little bit more entertaining than a rom-com or a drama or something like that, because it does have some action in it. But it's nothing like the original trilogy. And I'm okay with that because, like I said, there was a lot of character development, and I do like character development. The Fellowship of the Ring, pretty much the bulk of that movie is character development, and it is critical. It is absolutely critical for a movie like that to have character development, because otherwise you don't care. You don't get invested in these characters. And you get invested in every single one of these characters. Whether you like it or not, you get invested in Jar Jar Binks. The ones that you don't get invested in is Anakin Skywalker. And he's the one that you really need to be invested in. I find myself more invested in Palpatine in this movie because it's like, okay, I know this guy's a bad guy. I know it. And now I'm excited to see the rest of his story, because for me, the thing I take away from the prequel trilogy more than anything is that it's not the rise of Vader as much as it's the rise of Palpatine. And there's a very good reason why Vader is not on my top 10 greatest villains list. I haven't done the top 10 greatest villain list, but I have a top 10 villain list. If you guys want to hear that, just let me know. I will. But Palpatine is on that top 10 villain list because he is, and it's actually mostly because of the prequels. It has very little to do with the original trilogy. But anyway, so that's Star Wars Episode 1. Tomorrow we'll do Episode 2. Attack of the Clones? Yeah, Attack of the Clones. So yeah, we'll talk about that one tomorrow.